Welcome to the Christopher Peter Review. My name is Christopher Peter and I am the political economist, investor, and podcaster behind the original content you will experience over the last few Labor Day weekends. As a political economist, I have used this time to find ideas that can create the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. Our national battlefield. I review salient current events and discuss the impact these events have on our public policy, our economic outcomes, and our overall society and what is the optimal approach. I strongly recommend that you take the time to do so. Here on this channel you will experience my daily content discussing headlines and happenings and tours accompanied by tour guides from the National Park Service. You can experience my weekly podcast episodes featuring graphics from the point in time when these served as the arena for our fight for freedom and to protect our union. Without any further delay, we all know and hear often is that we should all know our history because those who do not understand what happened in the past are destined to repeat the same mistakes that led up to the conflicts and events that stand out in time. Also, the events of our history are part of our culture. The good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. The University of North Carolina runs a commercial talking about the tragedy occurring in Ukraine caused by Russian attacks focused on cultural sites. I saw it when I watched the game against the University of South Carolina. The anthropologist spoke of the statues and monuments being an important emblem of the culture and it inspired action for him to go and help preserve that culture. That is how many conservatives felt during the violent Summer of Love where hysteria-driven mobs attacked statues and memorials. While the left wing defended these actions and stated that nations do not memorialize the losing side of the wars. But these statues and memorials are important symbols and reminders. We cannot be foolish enough to try to pretend like slavery did not happen or try to apply values of today to yesterday. While slavery was black mark for society, it is important to know, remember, and ensure that other forms of slavery are not allowed to come to existence. You cannot simply hide our history or at the same time lose perspective. I strongly disagree with those who want to cancel the memory or contributions because they may have owned slaves. But their contributions to our culture is what helped lead to the freeing of slaves. I know it is hard to separate the emotion of slavery with the values of freedom that eventually led society to apply it more consistently to all people, not just those in the majority. There are many times even in our current society where we know what we need to aspire towards, but are inconsistent with or do not want the inconvenience associated with making the immediate change. Many of these voices who are influencing people to reject our history are trying to make us sympathetic towards values that are directly opposed to our traditional values of self-governance, individual freedom, and opportunity. We all understand the idea of the corruption of power. But too many apply those realities exclusively to those in corporate boardrooms. And not those in the halls of government. The whole reason America sought the painful, hard, and difficult journey that led to our independence was because early Americans understood the harm of government tyranny. American settlers saw hard-earned income, production, and the fruit of the toil taxed at any level the British Crown saw fit at the time. Seized at the discretion of those working for the Crown. All for the benefit of those in the United Kingdom of Great Britain. If they needed to fund their conflicts or colonization efforts, Americans and other colonies were the source without any voice or consideration of their own needs and wants. America fought and won our independence, and instead of simply just changing the tyrant, our founding fathers implemented a system of government built for the people, by the people, and of the people. Not on the first try, but they did after a do-over. But there was of course still inconsistency that was resolved almost a century later. In our modern society, we obsess over the fact that we all do not see the world the same. Reach the same conclusions after experiencing the same set of facts. But that was true both during our American Revolution, during our Civil War, and today. There were people who did not support our independence and even aided the British. We call those people progressive Democrats today. In all seriousness, there were those who did not feel like the risks would be outweighed by the rewards. Or they may have understood the benefits but had too much to lose if they supported the efforts. Just like people understand that slavery was wrong. But there was no other option for them to protect their economic interests. Especially when you consider that technology sharing or interstate commerce probably could have helped avoid the war if the North would have just helped industrialize the South before Reconstruction. There are many people today who do not really grasp the fact that America is really a collection of 50 states and additional territories united in a nation under the United States. In other nations, the national government is the law of the land with local governments drawing power from that national government. Not in the United States, the 50 states have constitutional discretion to operate independent of the federal government where they see fit on manners not completely prescribed to the federal government in our Constitution. Remember, all powers not prescribed to the federal government are held onto by the states per our Constitution. Why is this important? There are many benefits of having a unified policy approach. Helps with commerce between states and reduces the cost of compliance. But at the same time, States should have the right to go a different path when the needs and wants of their residents differ from the rest of the nation. For instance, California goes well beyond the federal government in regards to environmental protections. While I may not agree with their policies at times, I do think it is their right to do so. California voters are willing to trade some of their economic activity in favor of a perceived reduction in environmental damage. In the same manner, Texas, Florida, and others went their separate ways on the pandemic lockdowns because they knew their constituents were ready to move past the draconian pause. If you travel the nation, you will experience many similarities with your fellow Americans, but there are notable differences that are unique to the region. Truly open-minded people understand the regional issues may differ and policies that work in one environment may not work in others. While on television, you may think every community is a cookie-cutter version of another, but there are subtle differences. The different cultures and lifestyles will vary the needs and wants of individuals in these communities. For instance, I am from New Jersey and view driving as a staple of life. I prefer not to use public transportation because I am not accustomed to waiting for when I am allowed to proceed to my destination. Much different than people I know from New York City or Philly, where the use of public transportation is common. So if we are planning something, they are more likely to consider train schedules or what station is next to the place where I am more focused on where my keys are located. Just two different ways of living based on where we grew up. The great aspect of America was and still is that people can live the lifestyle of their choosing as long as it was self-sustainable and not harmful towards another. The federal government should not be in the business of deeming one group acceptable and not another if both lifestyles are self-sustainable and not harmful to themselves or others. The main lesson you learn when you visit these hallowed grounds is the price paid to gain independence from tyranny. The price paid to end oppression and expand freedom to all people. And how there were real moments where America could have lost these fights except for the efforts or momentary heroism of individuals. For instance, the famous Battle of Gettysburg was pivotal in preventing the Confederates from winning the Civil War. A battle that did not start off as a clear victory for the Union. Rather a conflict that came down to quick thinking of a Union general leading a regiment almost out of munitions, but willing to take a risky maneuver to swing the battle. Remember, the Civil War started in a battle where people thought the conflict would be an afternoon affair. Some actually tried to watch the fighting like it was an afternoon football game. Visiting Antietam, you can see the balcony hit by cannonballs and hear the stories of people falling from these balconies. I am not sure about you, but there is no way I am spectating during a battle. Maybe that is a lesson learned from the Civil War. Although no battle was fought at Valley Forge, the soldiers trained at the camp developed the skills needed to confront the highly vaunted British Army, which was the best in the world at the time. An outcast Hessian general taught early American soldiers the skills needed to hold lines and execute battle formations in another important conflict, where there was doubt about the potential for an American victory. When you stand on these grounds, the tour guides do a great job of setting the stage of what you may have seen if you were a soldier during these battles. And they also gave views for our enemies as well, which was very interesting as well. Hearing the stories of the feared rebel yell that the Virginia militia would do from the thickness of the forests created angst amongst their targets. The price paid to secure our nation built on freedom, opportunity, and diversity was high. So you would think Americans would value freedoms and not allow the government to usurp them back so easily. The freedom to speak out against the actions of the government is one that is so important. A freedom many in the world today do not have. Being the son of immigrants, I have family members who have been kidnapped or accosted by governments for being perceived as speaking against the people in power. Our freedoms and opportunities should not be taken for granted. We should never trade these for the temporary and fleeting comforts of government dependency. It is easy to do if you do not remember your history and appreciate it. The good and not so good all create the mix that led to the greatest nation, society, and economy that has stood for freedom, democracy, and peace like no other nation. Thank you for experiencing this special content on the Christopher Peter Review. Please continue to visit daily for more content. Thank you and talk you tomorrow.